Hyundai Motor, the maker of the popular Creta SUV, has got an approval for its 25,000 crore rupee IPO, which is going to be India's biggest ever. CNBC-TV18 has learned that Hyundai is targeting a listing by Diwali. The total offer size is 14.2 crore equity shares, and Hyundai expects a valuation between 1.5 lakh crore rupees and 1.7 lakh crore rupees. Hyundai is India's second largest car maker in terms of domestic sales. Their plant in Chennai has an annual production capacity of 8.2 lakh units, and the acquisition of General Motors' Talegaon plant will add another 2 lakh units. Hyundai, which has a strong portfolio of SUVs and a 14% market share, faces competition from Maruti, which is the market leader, and Tata Motors as well. The company's IPO is coming at a time when the industry is witnessing low demand, and the overall growth is expected to be just 3% in FY25. Joining us now to delve into the journey of brand Hyundai in India and the challenges it may face post-listing is BVR Subbu, a veteran of the Indian automobile industry and the former president of Hyundai India for nearly a decade. Also the author of the book, Santro, the Car That Built a Company. Mr. Subbu, thank you very much for joining us. This also must be a special moment for you when Hyundai is actually preparing for its IPO. Give us a sense of how the company is actually now poised for the future. It is the second largest car maker in terms of sales, but there is stiff competition.
Yeah. Well, when you call it the second largest car maker, I think it got to that second largest car maker within 6 months of startup. So it's been the second largest car maker for a long, long time, 25 years plus, actually. Well, yeah, it is very, very interesting to see the company and, to try and look back to how the journey really started. Tough days, initial days. We battled the financial meltdown in Korea. The parent just didn't have enough, funds to support us through, as much as we would have liked to. A bunch of things that happened, but it was a very interesting and very satisfying journey for a lot of us who were there at the very beginning, the early pioneers of Hyundai's days in India.
Right. What is the biggest challenge you feel that the company is going to face post-listing, sir?
For that, to answer that, perhaps you should start with trying to look at what are the foundation blocks for the entire, what should I say, the growth of Hyundai. And if you try and put those, I would try and put those into 5 or perhaps 6 heads. I'd put that under. For starters, I think you should look at the product technology, etc., etc. You should look at product quality, durability, reliability. You could look at product support. Support systems and so on. You could look at production efficiencies. But most important, I think you should look at the organizational DNA of the company as it then was. Remember that at that time it was, a challenger, a very youthful, vibrant, young company with what should I say, with a lot of ambition, therefore very fleet-footed, very agile. I think, typically what happens is that companies sometimes tend to grow. When they grow, they sometimes lose some of those attributes. So one of the things that it had then was its ability to listen to consumers and a lot of humility. This kind of thing, typically changes in companies as they grow toward middle age. So then instead of being young and fleet-footed, you might just get a little stodgy, a little, what should I say, around the midriff you may put on a little too much weight, in terms of management, I mean, and so on. And, that is, I think, the big challenge that Hyundai would face today. Because try and look at it like this, when you go public, there is a far greater amount of scrutiny that the company will have to face. Now, when you look at that scrutiny, what would that be? It would be in terms of, it could be anything. It could be a bunch of things. It could be related party transactions, or the kind of purchases that you make from sister companies or connected companies, whatever, whether it's in purchases or it could be in logistics, could be in advertising, could be in a bunch of things. So related party transactions will be a lot of focus areas particularly for analysts and proxy funds and for people like even independent directors. On the other hand, there'll be a bunch of governance issues that Hyundai might nowadays find might find challenging. When I talked of the organizational DNA, one thing that I think has happened, unfortunately, in Hyundai is an organizational culture has not been built from within. So you had a lot of transplants from other parts of industry, which hasn't necessarily been so great, because you have had issues of ethical standards falling and people having to move out. You can't really have a situation where you bring in someone from a competitor, a guy has, let's say, posh issues being, or looked in for posh issues, and then you give him a leadership role. That kind of a thing, is a little, should I say, would be tough. It'll come under a lot of scrutiny. So that is one. So
you believe that related party transactions and ESG compliance will be a big problem for Hyundai? So you feel that ESG compliance and related party transactions and governance issues in general would be an area where the company would be questioned?
I would say not just ESG. ESG is, I know it's helped consultants and auditors become very, very relevant. But governance in a more direct sense is what I'm talking about. But moving on from the organizational DNA issues, I think the other area that Hyundai could face a major challenge is, when you looked at the early days, Hyundai was the absolute leader in technology. When Maruti was still talking in terms of, lauding the benefits of a carburetor technology, Hyundai came in and said, look, the world is driving MPFI. India deserves MPFI. When people were still talking of IDI diesel engines in the country, Hyundai said no. We believe the world is going to be driving common rail, so we bring in common rail. So Hyundai was the absolute technology leader then. That leadership position, it seems to have ceded now in more ways than one. Look at hybrids, for instance. Now, what happens with hybrids is, now if you have a Toyota Camry today, probably gets, 16 kilometers, 17 kilometers a liter on Delhi streets. Now, a Hyundai Creta, which is their largest selling model, probably gives 8, maybe 9 kilometers per liter. I don't know. In real life, real-term conditions, I'm not talking of AR, AI, and all that is advertised. I'm talking real life, what consumers face. Now, in such a situation, without a hybrid technology capability, the Creta might find itself, under a lot of pressure. Now, that is the largest selling model. Now, on a Creta, typically, Hyundai probably makes, for an average ticket price of 14 odd lakhs, we're probably making 3 lakhs or so per car. When this kind of thing happens, you could find the Creta under tremendous pricing pressure. You have on the one side, consumers going gaga over the fuel efficiency of hybrids. On the other hand, you have some states saying, okay, we're cutting down road tax on hybrids. Now, this will put pressure on their cash cow. And when that happens, it could impact shareholders, potential shareholders, very, very significantly. I think this is one, I would say, probably the biggest concern. Yeah, on the one hand, Hyundai has electrics, and the electric vehicles of Hyundai are very, very good. The Ioniq 5 is probably amongst the best in its category globally. But in India, I don't see electric cars really taking off in the same way. Today, it's got a, it Two-wheelers, three-wheelers is a completely different economic case. But in cars per se, if you look at cars in the electric space, it's a bunch of other things that really impact demand. And today, with a 5% GST, yeah, cars are still looking high priced. With let's say 20% GST or 10% GST, something would happen, because ultimately the government cannot keep on with the kind of products,
subsidizing cars
to cars, electric cars. Let's not forget that the government probably makes $2.5 trillion rupees in terms of POL, GST, excise, tax excise duties. So you can't wish that away. So you won't let it die just like that. So there are a bunch of those
that's
issues.
important. And let me also bring in one more point.
I think Hyundai still got a decent.
Yeah, let me also bring in one more point. Do you feel that this IPO could have been done earlier? I think in your book, you've also touched upon the fact that the company had probably contemplated an IPO some years back as well.
Well, actually, when the company came in, when the company started, it was actually had to raise funds, and it actually looked at selling out a significant stake to the UTI and AIG, but they didn't really get down to agreeing to the price. If I recall right, it was they wanted it at 14.75, and Hyundai was not willing to go below 17 or something. So there was I mean, I'm sure they must be really cursing their luck on this. No, even after that, the agreement with the government was, I think, to actually go in for an IPO after 7 years. But somehow the government kind of didn't insist on that. So ultimately, Hyundai did not go in from there. But today, I think things are kind of different for Hyundai. Hyundai needs this IPO today from India. Look at the kind of dividend that's been taken out for the last 3 years consistently. So that's one side of it. But with the kind of investments that Hyundai globally is making on EVs, for instance, it needs a significant amount of what should I say, dividend income coming out of India, or actually, sell out of India to take this cream for its other larger global ambitions. That is, I think, why this IPO is happening now. That's
right.
That's the way I would read it.
Okay. So Mr. Subbu, I'm running out of time, so I'll put one more final question to you, sir, if I can. And that would be, what do you think Hyundai now needs to do for success in the future? Currently, it's coming out with the Creta electric SUV. Early next year, 4 new electric cars by 2030. If I were to ask you one thing that the company needs to do right, or maybe 2 or 3 things, what would those be, sir? If you could probably give us a sense briefly.
Number one, clean, fire-in-the-belly company with a young outlook, number one. Number 2, technology focus, and, I would say getting back to technology leadership. And another thing, number 3, is communicating better. I mean, what do Hyundai ads say today? Do they even say anything to consumers? Whether it's on electronic media, whether it's on social media. So, I mean, what are you communicating? What values? What does the company stand for? What are you talking about? I think this is something. So, that's why I said, middle-aged complacency, I think, with an expanding midriff, I think is one of the biggest problems the Hyundai faces. And I mean, I would say they would have to do something very fast, because if someone nimble, I mean, one of the other companies gets a little more nimble in the head first. I mean, today, look at it. Except for the dealers in the company, nobody else knows has the same sense of how the company was created. 60, 70 dealers who are still around. Nobody else knows. So the feeling, the passion is not there. You can't have 12 people doing the job of 2 people Even if you expanded, your range of production by, your volume of production from, say, 350 to 800,000. 2 people can't do the job. 12 people can't be asked to do the job of 2 people. That's something the company has to think about. These are things that I think the company has to get a handle on now.
All right. That's an important point and note to end on, sir. Thank you so much for joining us. It's always a pleasure having you here on CNBC-TV18, talking about your journey at Hyundai and how do you think the company is poised for the future and the mantras for success that the company should possibly keep in mind. Always a pleasure speaking to you, sir. Time for a short break here on CNBC-TV18, but up next, the corporate ministry, the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, is expected to roll out guidelines for the centre's internship program within next week. A special discussion on the other side.